Hello, dear friends. Big changes are coming in all areas of life. According to Scott Bennett, opinion piece. Resigning is not fashionable. Illness of resignation. Government against people. Laws against common sense. We are at a turning point. Forcing powers leads to tyranny. World leaders are in shock. They want to impose a colorful agenda. Strong solar flare affects the southern hemisphere. Let's start. If the definition of democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, current governments are beginning to react against their own people, as in the case of Spain, by using tear gas, against its farmers, despite the fact that the preliminary title of the Spanish Constitution literally says that national sovereignty resides in the Spanish people, from whom the powers of the state emanate. Resignations due to assumption of responsibility are not in fashion, because no one wants to be responsible for anything. So the ruler is forced to make dictatorial decisions in order not to lose power. Arbitrariness is developing that would never have been possible under normal circumstances, and every possible division among people is being fueled. Laws and regulations that go against common sense are approved and applied by the so-called authorities. Political resignation culture refers to the tendency or practice of politicians to resign from office under certain circumstances. In Spain, political resignations have occurred for various reasons, such as scandals, personal reasons, health reasons, or public pressure. Likewise, in the history of Spanish democracy, there have been resignations due to scandals, personal reasons, and health. The decision to resign is often influenced by ethical, legal, and political factors. Inflection point. According to Joe Rogan, we are at a turning point where our focus is returning to the original plan on governments that protected the natural rights of citizens, and we are moving more vigorously away from the rule of elites in a globalist society. Totalitarianism is being replaced by acracy, a state where there are rules but no rulers. Most likely, this year, the year Pluto has entered Aquarius, the sign of a free, caring, human-centered society, we will see the beginning of the return to sovereignty, real money, a healthy and firm form which humanity can work and play, a society focused on the good of all. If we are lucky, we will see the fall of those remaining who work for the dark side and who have been holding together the remains of an old paradigm based on the rulers owning everything, including the people. A new society will emerge when many of us remember how we were created to be in the first place. The self-responsible, loved, fearless, infinitely creative divine presence, here on earth to play together. Happy Year of the Wooden Dragon. Curious. The Year of the Dragon begins today, February 10th, 2024. The last year of the Dragon was 2012. A strong solar flare causes a radio blackout in much of the southern hemisphere. It affected high-frequency radio communications in South America, Africa, and the South Atlantic. This Friday, there was a strong X-class solar flare caused by a region of sunspots that emerged in the southeastern corner of the Sun. The magnetic poles of the Sun are reversing. Intense magnetic activity is already occurring on the solar surface that occurs before the poles invert. Plastic pollution in the ocean is broken down. A little girl talks about her alien mother who visits her from time to time. A quantum computer uses a time crystal as a control dial. Time crystals can be used to stabilize fragile states within quantum computers, creating a strange state of matter called a time crystal inside a quantum computer, helped researchers stabilize a fragile quantum state inspired by Schrödinger's cat, according to Carmela Padavic-Callaghan. Dystopia. Davos wants to ration meat, electricity, and gas and force the use of central bank digital currency. US leaders signed treaty to ration meat, electricity, and gas. Bill Gates wants to block the sun, dispersing nanoparticles in the stratosphere. Gates wants to replace traditional agriculture with insect farms and artificial meat laboratories. If you control the food, you control the people. Microsoft announced its plan to disable the computers of people who shared unconventional content online. Change your operating system to Linux. Precious metals. Gold and silver fight tyranny, according to Catherine Austin Fitts. 42 states eliminate their taxes on the patches of gold and silver. According to Arcadia Economics, the unfolding banking disaster comes as gold and silver diverge widely in terms of open interest, with the number of gold open contracts at 5-year lows, but silver open interest curiously on the rise, the opposite direction. This is something I have never seen before. In China, 271 tons of physical gold were withdrawn from the stock market in January. It is the second largest withdrawal in history. Silver is the new gold in Egypt to protect savings. Egypt deploys air defenses along its border with Palestine. Central banks around the world have been accumulating gold for some time. There is a good reason for this, and we are witnessing it right now. The new gold rush is not in the mines, but in the garbage. Technological devices contain precious metals that are worth a lot of money. There are already emerging companies that earn €8,000 a day recycling electrical devices. Every year, 50 million tons of electronic waste are thrown away, and only 15% is recycled. Gregory Manarino talks about the rising price of crude oil as the new war rapidly expands. The global economic landscape is on the cusp of monumental change as major oil-producing nations, including Russia and Saudi Arabia, increasingly look to the Chinese yuan over the dollar for crude oil trading. USA. The Air Force is calling for retired pilots, air traffic controllers, missile operators, and other special service veterans to return to active duty. Bill in the US Senate to ban displays of Satan. Institutional investors are betting on a Trump victory, and the alarm goes off. Peter St. Onge in Wall Street Silver thinks a Trump victory could stop the recession. According to Mark Sira, one of the bondholders already had his money withdrawn for violating his confidentiality agreement. This means that some bondholder would be receiving money. 20 nations joined the BRICS and abandoned the dollar. The dollar has a lot of downward pressure due to the lack of demand for its use. Consumers hit the brakes as debt reaches record levels. The dollar represents almost 60% of world currency reserves. Despite gradual erosion over 22 years, with a drop of 12%, the global dominance of the dollar continues. Delinquencies of credit cards and auto loans are at their highest point in more than a decade. China. The Chinese bank Zhongzhou Commercial Bank has notified its clients of the suspension of all operations with Russia. Epic Economist shares news on China's stock market crash as Hong Kong crisis deepens. Gregory Manarino analyzes the worsening liquidity crisis. Manarino says that several banks are on the verge of bankruptcy and that they must take action now. Joe Bloggs at China's anti-corruption disaster that is damaging the Chinese economy as spending falls. Blogs believes that the Chinese economy is imploding with the fastest decline in 14 years, and its stock market plummeting to its lower level in 5 years. China's economic data from January reveals that the economy has seen deflation for the past 4 months, and consumer prices are falling at the fastest pace since 2009. According to blogs, when President Xi took office in 2012, he announced that he wanted to fight corruption in China. In the last 10 years, more than 5 million people have been arrested for corruption, and the latest crash has given rise to a culture of fear that spreads through Chinese companies that has led to a reduction in spending that harms the Chinese economy. Crisis. Sinfu says Russia is unleashing the unthinkable on the world economy. Sinfu analyzes the major US crisis hitting Europe, China's deflationary panic, and Argentina's debt collapse. Steven Van Meter says the unexpected has just reached levels not seen since 2009 financial crisis. Van Meter says world leaders are in shock as a major economic spirals out of control. A storm is brewing as Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen turns her attention to non-bank mortgage lenders. These companies offer loans without the financial safety net of customer deposits. The contagion of the US real estate sector extends to Germany and Japan, according to Awakening in 3D. Cybersecurity remains the number one risk for banks. According to the Atlantis report, the banking industry is facing a crisis of trust and stability, and many banks have struggled to survive and adapt to changing customer behavior, preferences and expectations, as well as increasing competition, regulation and innovation in the banking market. Some banks have been forced to declare themselves bankrupt or merge with other banks to address financial and operational difficulties. Others have tried to reinvent themselves. The economic crisis has reduced the income and wealth of customers and banks. It has increased the risk and uncertainty of banking activities and performance, creating a gap and deficit between bank assets and liabilities. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.